The Morgan Report with David Morgan.
David Morgan with you with the weekly perspective for the week ending 20 November 2020. Well, let me start with the stock market as I usually do and say that the U.S. equity market, all of the major indexes are in a high-level consolidation. The Dow, the S&P 500, and the Qs, the NASDAQ. Also, I think it's important to point out that, as many of you know, I've been bullish on energy in the long term, but of course, oil prices have fallen this year. In fact, the energy sector has been the weakest sector in the overall stock market this year. However, in this past month, it's been about the strongest sector for the 1 month period. So, might want to keep an eye on energy. I certainly am. As I've said many times, most people think that the entire system runs on money, and that's certainly how we perceive it, but really it runs on energy. Without energy, nothing happens. So it's basically a petrodollar system currently. So a dollar is a unit of account for basically for how much energy it can buy. And of course, that varies from, time to time. We've all gone through the big spike in energy, and we're now seeing a very low energy price. Don't think that's going to remain forever. This is from Michael Snyder's Economic Collapse blog, and one you have heard me talk about over and over, in fact, well before it became part of the mainstream news, and this is the food situation globally. UN World Food Program warns of famines of biblical proportions in 2021 as some Americans wait 12 hours for food. I won't read the article, it's pretty short, but as you can tell, I have been quite concerned about this and continue to actually become more concerned due to the many vectors that are moving the food supply into less and less as the population increases more and more. Next is from Zero Hedge. Quote unquote, there's plenty of firepower left. Mnuchin defends decision to end the Fed's emergency lending program. Again, this is on Zero Hedge. I won't read it to you. It's fairly short, but basically there's so much going on here that no worries, we can end the emergency lending program. And, of course, right behind that, and on Market Watch, Fed's Evans says he's disappointed by the Treasury's decision to end the emergency loan programs. So I'll give you my perspective. You may or may not like it, but a lot of you tune in. I think at this point it matters little. I'm not saying I want to see anyone get hurt. I'm not saying that emergency funds aren't needed. What I'm saying is that the system has been corrupted for so long that whether you keep printing or stop printing, the damage has been done. And yes, at the far end of the curve, the tail, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter. Either way, the damage is done. So I'm repeating myself, but it's important because, yes, you could go on a case-by-case basis and find individuals that get hurt if it ends. You find people that get hurt if it doesn't end. But again, this is like putting a Band-Aid on something that needs a tourniquet. It is not going to do that much in the big picture. And of course, here we are, actually two ends of the Fed saying, Treasury saying one thing, Fed Evans is saying something else. They don't know what to do, or maybe they do. I think that they are striving to move into a central bank digital currency. And I'll be talking about that more in the Morgan Report, as I have done over the past several months. I think this is their way out. They can keep negative interest rates by doing that more easily than if they're in the current system. And they'll be transparent to most people. They won't even realize that it's taking place. Then they will keep cash, at least from the last bit of research I've done here yesterday. Cash won't go away instantly. They'll keep it parallel with the central bank digital currencies, so many will be kind of oblivious to it, and then they will slowly reel that in. Here's an interesting one. I've got this off of goldsilver.com, my good friend Mike Maloney's website. I haven't seen this one before as far as Forex Factory, but I think it's pretty interesting. Here we go again with another Fed member. Economic growth is probably stalling due to the coronavirus spike, says Fed's Kaplan. I don't even know what to say, but my perspective is, really? Thank you. I guess we didn't know that without your help. Rather than being so cynical, let me just say there's a couple of interesting things about here that actually I want to point out. If you go down to this feed underneath it with Walter Bloomberg, Kaplan says that we won't work off the excess oil inventory until early 2022. And I tend to agree with that. I'm a subscriber to oilprice.com, not just the free service, but the paid one. And with the slowdown, there's obviously less demand for oil presently. From CNBC, surging debt during the pandemic is creating dangers for investors in developed countries. Well, thanks for letting us know. Again, my cynicism can't be stopped this morning as I'm making the video. The coronavirus pushed global debt levels to new highs, over $272 trillion in the third quarter, according to the Institute for International Finance. Sonia Gibbs, IIF's Managing Director of Global Policy Initiatives, told CNBC on Friday that one of the big areas of concern is in developed markets, which are battling slow growth and rising debt at the same time. This is where I've talked about the backside of the power curve. You can look that up on Google if you don't understand it. Being a pilot, I know what it means. But what it means for us is that there's more and more printing and it does less and less good. In other words, if you borrow $1 and get $1.20 out of it, that's actually good use of capital. You're making money on the money you borrowed. Right now, it takes something like $5, $10. I mean, it used to be $5. Now I think it's $12. I don't want to misstate it. The idea is what's important. It takes multiple dollars of borrowing to get $1 in production. So you're going backwards, which proves my point. You're pumping more and more funding money into the system and getting less and less results for doing it. And at some point, you get into what's called the crack-up boom, which is what von Mises has talked about many, many times. As von Mises explained in his book, Human Action, if once public opinion is convinced that an increase in the quantity of money will continue and never come to an end, and that, consequently, the prices of all commodities and services will not cease to rise, everybody begins eager to buy as much as possible and restrict his cash holdings to a minimum size. For under these conditions, the regular costs incurred by holding cash are increased by the losses caused by the progressive fall in purchasing power. In the face of continuous credit expansion, consumers' inflation expectations accelerate to a point where price rates increases outstrip the rate of central banks' monetary expansion. This necessitates an even greater use of the monetary spigots until the end stages of a hyperinflation makes the currency worthless. Gold indicates a tumultuous future of the monetary breakdown, with tremendous social and economic upheavals. And that's where we're at, folks. I will talk briefly about the gold and silver markets just off the top of my head. I still think that the gold and silver markets are in a trading range to lower. I think that'll continue over the next month through Thanksgiving and Christmas or whatever holiday you celebrate. And I am looking for a strong first quarter of 2021. There will be some tax loss selling at the end of the year. And barring any further black swans, that's the way it should remain, in my view. There is what's called a death cross that took place in the gold market, where the 50-day moving average went below the 200-day moving average. That's usually technically a pretty good indicator that things are going to come down. We could get a spike low in gold. I don't know. I do know that these technical indicators are valuable, but they're not perfect. I wouldn't be surprised to see gold hit the $1,800 level or thereabouts, and probably remain there and come back up. I don't think it'd stay at that level for too long. That would be a key area to look at, meaning that if it got below that, you might want to reevaluate further purchases for a while. Long term, still very bullish on the metals. And I will leave you with, there's nothing more important than the truth. We certainly could use a little more of that everywhere. And let me just say that a lot of us, and I'm guilty as well, it's like the truth, the objective truth. In some areas that are gray, it's almost impossible to have an objective truth. But I want to point out that it's, the idea of it's my truth. And that can be true. The idea that, I believe that this is true. I believe it with everything I've got. Even though all evidence and information points otherwise. And if that's a fact, then it's called delusion. So we're all guilty of it at times, or I'm not saying everyone's delusional. I'm saying that the main problem, in my opinion, about the human condition is the belief system can be greater than the truth. And this, of course, causes a great deal of miscommunication in human affairs. And without real communication, we fail to really connect. And without a real connection, we are always sitting there looking at the other party, perhaps, or the other person in our family or associate or someone randomly on the street, without understanding what's really going on because we haven't really communicated. I'd say the left is probably the best at trying to communicate on an emotional level. And in my view, the right is probably better at trying to communicate on an intellectual level. Again, that's just my opinion, and I'm not trying to pick sides. What I'm trying to say is they're both at fault, from my perspective, because to really communicate, you need head, heart, and hands. You need a complete being to be able to talk to another complete being without any judgment, without looking at flaws, without looking for something, and not looking for affirmation of what your belief system is and getting it affirmed. But we've lost that. We've lost the ability to critically think and to objectively take all information in and really evaluate it in a proper manner. Again, head, heart, and hands. The reason I use hands is that represents the physicalness of our material world, our own human bodies, not to mention the other parts, the head, the intellect, and the heart, the emotional side. So I'll leave it there. Enough philosophy. I just wish you all the best during these very interesting times. We are locked down here again in Washington State. I'm not happy about it, but this is the conditions we're under. Until next week, remain vigilant, and I wish you all the very best.